Hey everybody, tonight we're debating whether or not there is evidence for reincarnation, and we are starting right now with Sidharth and Arjuna. Thanks so much for being with us. The floor is all yours.
All right, so I'm Arjuna. Today we're going to be just arguing that there is evidence for reincarnation. This is different from proof for reincarnation. So there's a lot of scientific theories which we have evidence for, but don't have proof for. The evidence for reincarnation is in the form of children who spontaneously remember past lives. There are also cases of memories of past life that come from hypnosis. A lot of them turn out to be garbage. Often it's found that the person, when re-hypnotized and asked where the information came from, read it in a book earlier or something. But some hypnosis cases are stronger. The researchers, Jim Tucker and Dr. Ian Stevenson, which have looked into this research, prefer to take the children who spontaneously remember past lives because these have a higher rate of quality evidence behind them when investigated. The evidence for these cases, obviously, if it was just memories and nothing more to it, then we would just attribute it to the fanciful imaginations of children or their suggestibility. But when we have corroborating evidence, then that's no longer the best explanation. So there's three categories of the evidence. The first is memories which can be verified to contain accurate information which the children could not have acquired through ordinary means. So in a couple of minutes, Sidharth is going to give a few examples of this kind of evidence with specific cases. The second category of evidence is birthmarks, which correspond to wounds on the body of the deceased individual whose life matches the description that the child gives. And the third category is behaviors and emotions which match this deceased individual. So when all of these things line up, it's a convergence of evidence which makes reincarnation the best explanation. So, if it was just, for example, in some cases they find, I think I don't know the exact numbers, there's a number of cases where they find a bullet, the person died by a gunshot, and there's a bullet entry and exit wound, and there's a corresponding birthmark to the entry and the exit wound. And the entry and exit wounds are different from one another in ways which match what the wounds would be like on the deceased individual. And the chances of having two matching birthmarks like that, maybe Sidharth has the numbers ready, I haven't pulled them up, it's astronomically unlikely. And then you combine that with, for example, that the children might display something which psychologists call traumatic play, where they act out something that, relates to their previous life, or they might have emotions and thoughts about people from that previous life, which are the ones you'd expect that person to have. And that's another thing that matches up. And then, of course, the memories, knowing details about a person's life, which only that person could have known, or which the child would have had no way of acquiring. In many of these cases, the researchers had to do extensive digging of stuff that was not available on the internet in order to corroborate this information, which is not something these child or even the parents of the child could have done. And then lastly, Sidharth is going to be giving some evidence from, I'll let him explain that one because I haven't thought it, mediumship, some evidence from mediumship. So he can explain the evidence there, but the way that relates is it shows the ability of consciousness to exist separate from the body, and for an individual to continue to exist, with an intact personality after departing their physical body. And this is a kind of evidence, it makes the plausibility of reincarnation. It adds to the case. So now I'll hand it over to Sidharth to go into the evidence.
Thank you, Arjun, for the brief intro which you shared. So there are two kinds of evidence which we will discuss today. The first is the evidence relating to children who could recall their previous life. But before we go deep into the evidence and give you some numbers, I want you to imagine a case. Imagine you are a parent and you have a 2 or 3 year old child, and he or she comes up to you and tells you, "Dear Daddy, I remember my past life, and this is what I used to be. This used to be my name of my wife. That's used to be my name of my father. This is where I used to live. This is whom I used to play with. That's what I used to sell. That's where I used to work." When you hear so many different data points, you think, maybe, first time the kid says something, you may think, hey, maybe this is just, the kids like to imagine stuff, joking, But when the kids start giving so much information day after day after day, And it's just not information, but also behavior. If the kid starts acting, hey, as an adult, if the kid starts asking for things which only adult ask, then you should start wondering, maybe there is something more to it than just the imagination of the child. And this is exactly which happened in the cases of reports submitted by Dr. Ian Stevenson. Dr. Ian Stevenson was the chair of Department of Psychology at University of Virginia. And in 70s and 60s, 70s, and 80s, he went to various countries looking for such cases being reported by locals in media or in other places, and tracking them down and checking them rigorously whether are there any cases where kids have reported their previous lives, because he had heard about that this has been the case, and he found a lot of them, and he recorded them in nauseating detail. So in about 30 to 40 years of research, Dr. Ian Stevenson, along with his friends and associates, Dr. Jim Tucker, Dr. Brian Grayson at University of Virginia, and other scholars in other parts of the world, they all together collected 2,500 cases of children who could recall their previous life. And these cases were the ones in which the previous personality had been found. So go back to the imagined case that your kid is telling you these details, and you go to that place and you see, hey, these details match. When you hear that such details have matched for a kid who is 2 or 3 years old, whom we have not given any computer or internet to search for, this is 70s and 80s. Remember, there's no iPhones or iPads at that time. So you seem to wonder, what is an explanation for it? How come a 3-year-old kid is able to behave, is able to share such unique information to which the kid has no access to, apart from the reason that it has to be a case of reincarnation. So, many people can make the claim, maybe the parents, they want to make money of their kid, and they schooled their kid as a 2 or 3-year-old to say these things. So to counter that, I'm going to discuss a very special category of those 2,500 cases. What is the special category? These are the cases of children whose statements were recorded by a third party before they went to see and or find the previous personality. This means there was no chance for the parent to go and get the information and mix up the matter. And the cases which I'm discussing, the previous personality lived miles away, and there had been no contact between those families before the third party recorded everything down. So let me explain one more time. The kid says a few things about his past life. A third person comes and records it down on a piece of paper, prints it or shares it and keeps it safe. Then they go and look out for that person in that locality. They find it, and the qualities and the details match. There are, out of the 2,500 cases, there are 33 such cases. These have been recorded by Professor Jim Tucker in a 2005 paper. You can look up online the cases of reincarnation type with written records. So one such case, which I want to discuss right now, or two such cases I want to discuss right now. The first case is Sujit. So Sujit was born in a coastal town of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a country south of India, a small country compared to India. And there was this boy named Sujit who, at the age of 2 years old, he started to talk about his previous life. He started telling his family members, "Hey, don't call me Sujit, call me Sami. That's my name." And he started fearing trucks. Whenever he would hear the name truck or hear about the noise of the truck, he would run away and hide. And he started telling his friends at something between 2 and 3 years old. He started telling his friends and his family members that he used to have a wife named Maggie. he used to often quarrel with Maggie. And he lived in a town called Gorkana, which was something like 100 kilometers from where they were living. He used to work on trains, and he used to make and sell, local liquor. Like he used to distill liquor himself in his previous lifetime, and he used to sell that, for which he was famous. And he also shared that he died being hit by a truck. So a local monk who was a Buddhist monk who was staying in nearby, he came to know about this kid saying these things. So usually, local monks in these areas like are teachers and also in some sense, head of the family. He recorded all these details. And then he himself went on a journey to verify these details. Note also, this boy at 2 or 3 year old, he used to sometimes ask his parents for the liquor known as arak, which he used to produce. You can't imagine a 3-year-old kid asking for liquor, it's too strange. There were no TVs there, and he used to ask. So this case was verified in an amazing manner by this monk who went on to do this research, to look after this person. And he indeed found a person named Sami who had died being hit by a truck. And then later, Dr. Ian Stevenson, he went and he interviewed all the people involved in this case and recorded all the details and presented this detailed report in 1975 paper, a book called Cases of Reincarnation Type, Volume 3, Cases from Sri Lanka. Next case is the case of Kumkum. She's a girl who at the age of 3-year-old could tell things from her past life. And in her case, it was one of Kumkum's aunt who recorded all the details on a paper and kept it safe before, kept it safely before them going and finding out the person on the other side. Now, Kumkum was born in a higher caste. In India, they have different castes, lower caste, higher caste. So she was born in a higher caste, and she was narrating the details of a person whom by the details you could tell belonged to a lower caste. And her father didn't even want to discover or put any effort in finding that person because it meant disrepute for the family. So her father the whole time tried to hush away the incident. In fact, he used to chastise her for sharing such details. Only because her aunt was very friendly, she could, take those details from her. So, she shared where she lived. She also shared the name of her son. She shared how she died. She shared which place she used to live. She shared that in her house, there was an iron safe for which she had a snake whom she used to feed milk. She also shared that the snake had a part of its tail missing. She also shared that she used to fast on these specific days. And later, when the previous person was found, those details again matched in an amazing manner. So these are two such cases where there's written record. Another type of reincarnation cases is, as my friend Arjun shared, where birthmarks are matched. Like an amazing case is a case of a boy named Chennai, who is from Thailand. This boy shared that where he used to live, and he also shared that how he died because somebody shot him gunpoint on his head, and he showed that he has his birthmark because of that shot. He showed exactly they have a birthmark here and a here. And when those details were later checked, and the previous person was found, whose name used to be, I can't remember right now what the name used to be. This case was recorded by Professor Haraldson, who's from Iceland. So not from Dr. Stevenson, but another person. So the name person used to be Buakai. So he could remember that how Buakai had died. So these is another case where you have a strong, you can say, a written record because it's a record of birthmark. So these are two such cases. Another type of evidence which I would like to share today in favor of reincarnation is the case of mediumship. I'm not sure how many of you know mediums. Mediums are like people with some extraordinary capabilities that you can go and share with them the names of people who have passed away in your life, and they can share with you some details regarding that person. Now, there has always been claimed that there's sometimes known as a cold reading, or people try to cheat. Being a medium, they will say things which are common, like your brother used to be very loving to you. I'm sure your brother used to love you a lot. But these details are it can be easily be cheated with. So there's always this case that the mediumships have been a topic of concern. But mediumship, if proven, can give an evidence that consciousness can live beyond the death of the human body. So a bunch of researchers at Windbridge Research Center in US, they developed a set of experiment. What's the experiment? They had these three people: the person who was giving reading, the medium; the person who is being read, the sitter; and an experimenter who is evaluating. They had all these three people blind to each other. That means it's called quintuple blind, or more than double blind system. So the reader, the medium had no idea whom he was giving reading for except the name which was given to him. The person who asked for the reading, he got back two sets of reading. One which came from the medium, and second were decoy readings from another person. And the reader was asked to rate that if either of those readings matched the person whom he had asked about. And then the experimenter was asked to evaluate this evidence without knowing whether he was judging it for a decoy reading or the correct reading. Such a system ensured there was no case of fraud. And they found in 67% of the cases, the medium was able to share unique information about the previous personality or discarnate person. So such research has been replicated by a group of researchers in Paris too. So this research, in topics of reincarnation and consciousness beyond death, has been repeated by multiple labs throughout the world. It is just not one researcher or two scholars, but a big branch of psychology studies this, known as branch of parapsychology. So let me summarize again. Dr. Ian Stevenson has done this research since 1970s, has recorded more than 2,500 cases along with his team. This research has been replicated a number of times. We're talking of cases in which there is a written record of children telling things about their past life, and those being recorded and then checked by a third neutral party. And then I also presented some evidence from Dr. Julie Bishop's WRC team, which have made this more than double blind system to verify medium research. So this is it from my side.
You got it. Thank you very much, SIdharth and Arjuna. And with that, want to let you know, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. And we want you to feel welcome no matter what walk of life you are from. We are glad you are here. And also want to let you know about this big, juicy debate coming up on the bottom right of your screen. Apostate Prophet returns to debate Stuart on atheism versus Christianity. You don't want to miss it, so hit that subscribe button, as that's going to be a big one next weekend. And with that, we'll kick it over to T-Jump. And G-Man, thanks for being here. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, thanks SIdharth and Arjuna for coming. Thanks for James for hosting, and G-Man for being my partner. Strange turn of events that is. So as far as I know, there's no evidence of reincarnation or past lives or mediumship ever working in any case ever. There's lots of cases of very flawed studies that don't in any way indicate what they're supposed to indicate. And they've been shown to be flawed because they've been replicated by skeptics like James Randi and his compatriots, who showed that the similar psychic phenomenon can be replicated by cold reading, hot reading, psychological manipulation, dissociative identity disorder. There's all kinds of things that show it's all human psychology, and there's no evidence of it really doing anything. If kids really could reincarnate, remember past lives, and they would have skills like drive cars, remember where they parked, the locations of the cities, that kind of stuff. They would do far better than kids of the same age who didn't reincarnate with information. So if reincarnation was a thing, then you'd expect the reincarnated kids to have new skills that they could then use to make more money, to be more successful, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't happen. All the cases of even the third-party cases don't work because the third-party recordings aren't the origination of the events. Like, obviously, this kid who the monk recorded having a past life experience had been doing this stuff with his parents before. So most likely it's his parent who told him this stuff and already knew the stories and just denied it and lied about it. And the monk went and checked it later. Like, oh yeah, look, they're right. So it was more likely a lie. And that's a far better explanation than actual reincarnation. What would be evidence of an actual reincarnation would be, like I said, if you could have the kids gain new skills, and those new skills could then be used to accomplish something in the world at a far higher rate than kids who don't claim to reincarnate. The fundamental explanation of all reincarnation is the fact that it happens to most kids. Most kids have false memories. And so they claim, oh, I had this false memory of a princess or a dragon or a king or whatever. And the vast majority of them are just completely fabricated. And they're obviously fabricated. But some of them kind of resemble people in the real world. And some of them are kind of accurate representations in some vague way. And so it's just a gambler's fallacy. If you have a bunch of random accounts that go across a wide enough spectrum, some of them will be accurate. Same with birthmarks. So none of that is particularly magical at all. It's just if you have a large enough sample size, some will be accurate. That's all it is. Most of them are definitely fraud, where the parents taught them things, or where they heard things from neighbors or other townsfolk and then internalized it as false memories themselves. All of it's explained psychologically. As far as I know, there isn't any actual evidence of reincarnation whatsoever. I'll hand it over to G-Man.
All right. And again, I'd like to thank James for having me on today. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I agree with T-Jump. There is no scientific evidence for reincarnation. In fact, the only way an argument can be made is through faith. And if they make an argument through faith, their argument through faith has to make logical and rational sense. T-Jump brought up an excellent point when he said that if these souls were really, went from one body to another, let's say a human to another human, then not only would they have to have new skills, they would have to have the skills of the person that went into their bodies. For example, I don't see, Julius Caesar dying and having to go through our educational system again and learning how to count to 3 or whatever. You know what I mean? Learning how to do math, learning how to do, things like that. He would already have these skills. He would be an even better warrior than what he was when he was a Caesar. So if you're going to take it on faith, because there is no scientific evidence for it, your claim has to make logical sense. It is kind of silly when you actually think about the whole reincarnation idea to begin with, because again, a soul has to leave a body to enter another body. The idea of a human dying and then having to become a dog for some reason, or a human being dying and having to become grass. I heard the gentleman talk about this before we started the show. The idea of a human being losing their soul and going into a body of a fish or something like that, I think is kind of ridiculous. In order for that to make sense, you have to have something demonstrable and something empirical to be able to prove that. And until they do it, there's no good reason to believe it. Now, I do have one explanation from the Christian worldview regarding people in their reoccurring dreams. As you know, Christians believe in Jesus Christ. We believe in God, but we also believe in demons too. And we believe that demons who have always existed, well, not has always existed, they are created beings that live outside of time and space or whatever. And they are able to communicate to people and tell people about things that happened in the past. And these things can happen while you're asleep. Okay. I use 1 Timothy 4:1, where it says that demons have the ability to teach people things, to tell people things, to whisper into their ears. Jesus rebuked Peter when Peter said that, that he would die for him, that he would protect him. He says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." You know what I mean? So demons have the ability to talk to people. The Bible talks about how a demon energized and controlled Judas Iscariot. You know what I mean? Now, that's not the same thing as it is in reincarnation, but it's proof that demon can talk to you, and a demon can control you, and a demon can get you to think certain things that are not your own thoughts. All right. So totally agree with T-Jump on this. The main point that I think we need to take out of this is, if they're going to argue that reincarnation is true, it's got to make rational and logical sense. You got to do better than you went to bed and you woke up, you know what I mean? And you dreamed about this person. Therefore, reincarnation is true. Got to do better than that today. I'll close there.
We will jump into open conversation, and want to let you know, folks, our guests are linked to the description. So if you want to hear more from them, you certainly can. With that, gentlemen, thanks so much. The floor is all yours for open dialogue.
All right, I've got some pushback on some of those points. So I didn't see much substantial arguments from either of our opposing interlocutors today. So it has to make sense. I haven't seen any logical contradiction pointed out in our work. It's ridiculous. Okay, well, that's just an opinion. souls becoming dogs is ridiculous. Yeah, demons planted the memories there. I really don't think you want to go down that road, because if demons can plant memories that make us think we lived before and all this sort of stuff, then that opens us wide to last Thursdayism. How do I know demons didn't plant my memories of everything prior to last Thursday? T-Jump mentioned that there's cold readings which can match the type of evidence we've got. There was no studies given. The evidence we presented has not been addressed in any details. There's just been assertions made that there's counter evidence. I want to know what this evidence is. And most of them are definitely fraud. So let's see one of the cases we presented demonstrated to be fraud.
Yeah, me or T-Jump?
Yeah, I can start. So first thing, I don't need to show a logical contradiction in your position to show it's flawed. Like, there's no logical contradiction with magical pixie leprechauns. That doesn't mean it's not a flawed idea. Secondly, I don't need to individually address each of your examples, because I mean, I didn't have them beforehand, so I don't have time to like just Google them and try to find individual examples, but you can, because this is rejected by the scientific community. So the better explanation is the things I listed, which are psychological misinformation, and the opportunity for the parents to like explain this to their kids and lie about it. The fact that it was recorded by a monk doesn't mean that the parents didn't do it before the monk came. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, the monk came and then this kid started to experience past life memories, and then the monk wrote it down, and the parents had literally no involvement yet. No, it's implausible. It's far more plausible to say, yeah, the parents just manipulated the kid into doing this, or that the kid heard it from other people. So yeah, that's a far better explanation than reincarnation. Also, the fact that you still have to teach the kid normal stuff in school is a good indication it was false. If the kid actually did experience reincarnation, as G-Man said, and I can't believe I'm agreeing with G-Man, yeah, they would already know math. They would already know basic languages. Like, if the kid was reincarnated from like a different country and could speak the language, that'd be great. Great example.
I forgot to mention that one.
But as we know, that's most likely false, because their parents mostly teach them the new languages when they're kids. So there's no actual evidence of reincarnation being true. None of the things you presented are the best explanation. The best explanation is the one that we have lots and lots of examples of, which is psychological manipulation.
Not to mention, I can't believe I'm saying this. I need to get your DVRs for this one. The burden of proof is on the one making the claim. And I have no problem meeting any of the burdens, meeting my burden at all. But if you make a claim and you're saying that somebody had a dream and this is proof of reincarnation, that is on you, not on me. I have the proof. So.
Regarding the skills point, so the people who remember past lives are they're outliers. It's not normal. And almost all of them are cases of people who died in a really traumatic way. So it's as if they're being given the opportunity to resolve, some unresolved stuff from that past life, or the trauma just is so powerful that it just carries over into the next life. As far as skills carrying over, well, often we do find people who are born as child prodigies. People are born with varying degrees of skills in this life. Reincarnation is a suitable explanation for that. There are cases where people, there's one case where the person went into the military and they were supposedly in the military in their past life. We do see some carryover, but you start in a new body, you have a new brain, that brain needs training. You still have to learn motor skills. That the brain gives us access to our cognitive abilities within this life. It's consciousness, it comes from the soul, but the brain is what gives us access to our cognitive faculties in this life and body.
Okay. Yeah, I think one second, I would like to add something. I think T-Jump got the question wrong. We're not trying to debate here what skills one can learn or what skills would be carrying over when somebody's reincarnated. We have to just show enough evidence to make a case that there is enough evidence for reincarnation. Now, what does reincarnation mean? And what skills should be carried forward? Tomorrow you can say a person who's reincarnated, he should know everything in his past life. We didn't claim. The debate is not titled, does reincarnation mean everybody knows what they know in their past life? No, we didn't claim that. We said, is there evidence that somebody has reincarnated? Yes, there is evidence.
No, you have evidence. No. You have evidence that you had a dream.
Let me finish.
That's what you have.
We do have to give him a chance to finish, man.
Let me finish. I'm not saying that somebody had a dream. I'm not talking about a dream. We're talking about kids who are sharing information with their parents, and then some of that, in some cases which are shared, there's a third party which is coming and recording it. And we're not just asking one or two details which you can throw around. Hey, he was just saying this thing. Now, in the case which I shared, Sujit, he shared the name of his father, his wife, the name of his kids, the place where he lived, the business he used to do. In fact, he used to show behavior of how to make distilled alcohol at home. as a small kid, which people were surprised that he's a small kid. How does he know that stuff? And why is he interested in that stuff? And he should act as an adult. You can find all those details in gory details in the work done by Ian Stevenson there. So just on the face saying that this is all fraud, this is actually not doing the hard work and trying to argue against it. Hey, whatever I'm saying is fraud, and then I don't need to prove anything at all. Well, take the case, take case by case, how much detail is there, and what's the motive behind parents frauding it? These are poor people in Sri Lanka. They didn't get a penny from the investigators, not from the monk. What is the motive behind 2,500 cases who are trying to talk about the previous life?
So first thing is it possible that the parents could teach a kid all of that without having a reincarnation?
Not a 3-year-old kid. Sorry.
The answer is yes. Yes, it is possible to do that. We have 3-year-old kids in China playing violin, which is significantly more complicated than making alcohol. So yes, we can absolutely have kids who are taught this information by their parents without any problem whatsoever, which is a more plausible explanation. The motive doesn't matter. Like the motive could be fame, the motive could be they believe it. And so psychological self-fulfilling prophecy, the motive could be religious beliefs. There could be lots of motives. The motives are irrelevant to the fact that is it more what
there's also the issue of when the soul is leaving one body to go into another and they're retaining all these thoughts in their memories. When the soul is going into another body, it retains everything that it's learned throughout its life, regardless of how much trauma it's been through or how many different things it's been through. It retains everything. If anything,
why would that be the case?
Like a super soldier. Well, because you're saying that this person's soul left their body and they went into another person's body. If that is true, they retain all of their memories and all of their thoughts. If they don't, then wait a minute.
Carry over our subtle impressions.
Hold on a minute. Because if they don't, then why are they having dreams about their past life? Okay. Why are they remembering they knew how to do things from their past life? That doesn't make any rational or logical sense whatsoever. If a soul is retaining their mind and they're going to live inside of another body, then they're going to retain the information that they had in the previous life. And we don't see that. We don't see that now. We don't even see that in science fiction. Anyway, I'll let you guys go. Okay. I'm sorry.
There's multiple different metaphysical views. So you can choose one metaphysical view and say, if this metaphysical view were true, then we would expect to say the things you just described. So that just means that metaphysical view isn't true. And we have other views where all that carries over are subtle impressions, and in extraordinary circumstances, some memories carry over.
Yeah, presuppositions. That's what you have. You don't have any actual any actual empirical data to be able to suggest that this is reincarnation. How do you know that is reincarnation and not somebody just dreaming or ideas being planted into their minds while they're dreaming?
Okay, by the demons?
Listen to me. You can laugh at me about the demons all you want. I can talk about karma and how people go into this, and I'll have my laugh later. Laugh all you want. But the point I'm getting at is this. You're telling everybody that your evidence for reincarnation is somebody having a dream.
No dream. It's
that's your argument. Your whole existence, your whole argument is reincarnation exists because I had a dream.
Well, so
that's your straw, man.
So by dream, he just means a psychological phenomenon. So a memory, something like that. So any psychological phenomenon that is interpreted to be a memory. But I kind of agree with his broad point here is that simply psychological phenomenon of I remember X isn't actually evidence that it's true. So you would need something more than that, like a skill. Like if someone could build an engine, like if a 3-year-old could build an engine with literally no prior training, we could have like their entire life recorded to know they had no prior training. That would be good evidence.
So would that be good evidence if somebody could, as a 3-year-old, do some amazing skill? Would that be evidence for reincarnation?
If we could show that like their parents didn't teach them it, and we could have like their entire life recorded before that to know their parents didn't teach them that.
How does the human soul get transferred into a grain of grass?
T-Jump is saying the evidence would be that we have to record a child from while he's born till 3-year-old and record everything on YouTube or maybe on camera. And if the kid is able to show some prodigious behavior, which he was not taught by their parents, then that would be enough evidence for it. Is that correct?
How does the human soul get recycled into grass? How does the human soul go to live inside of a dog or a cat? How does that work?
Well, I wanted to.
Where's the evidence for that? But where's the evidence for that? Where's the evidence that the human soul goes into a dog or a cat.
Let me answer the question first. So yes, I think that would be evidence. I think you would need to be able to falsify the hypothesis. The parents taught them this. And if you can't falsify that hypothesis, it's always a better explanation. And so if there's ever a time in the kid's life where their parents, they weren't being recorded, their parents could have taught them this, then yeah, that kind of falsifies your hypothesis, because that's always going to be more plausible than reincarnation until we actually have some empirical evidence of reincarnation.
Yes. Now, there are cases of child prodigies who have shown exemplary behavior, but since they were not aware of TGEM before, this debate, none of them tried, and they're not trying to prove their child to be a case of reincarnation. None of them recorded their videos of their kid while growing up from 0 to 3-year-old. So we don't have such evidence. But we do have a case which I shared today of Kumkum Verma. Now, as I shared, in the case of Kumkum Verma, her parents didn't even want her daughter to visit, themselves included, the previous person. It was only her aunt who visited the previous person. Why? Because they were from a higher caste, and the person she was talking the whole time was for a lower caste. So there was a negative incentive for the parent to teach their kid about something who's from a lower caste family. It's like, you wouldn't want your kid to you can't really have an example here in this in the Western world, because there's no caste system. But in India, the caste system is pretty heavy, which means that the lower caste are considered untouchables, not given respect. And she was born in a higher caste family, but she was revealing stuff for which her father used to punish her. So there is negative incentive in part of her parents to so-called fraud her daughter into this knowledge. What's the motive for her father to teach that?
Well, there could be lots of motives. So again, psychologically,
give me one.
Religious reasons to want to have reincarnation for some value, emotion. Wow. Want to have significance. Wait. Let me address here. So again, there are people who believe the world is flat just because they want to feel special. So the family just might want to feel special, and that would be a motivational self. So there's literally infinitely many psychological motivations that could exist. None of this is special. The fact that you have one possible counter motivation doesn't in any way eliminate the possibility of many more positive motivations. So unless you can actually read the entire psychology of the individual to know for a fact that there is more negative emotional connotation than positive, which you can't, then you can't use that as an argument that there is actually some kind of psychological deterrent for this, because there might not be. That might just be an apparent thing that's brought up in order to try and present evidence when it's not. It's just the psychological features aren't evidence.
And why is there a need for a person to relearn math and English and how to read and everything? If they're reincarnated. I'm not talking about somebody from the ancient Greek world or anything like that. You got an American that dies and goes into an American body, whether he be man or woman or whatever, right? Why is it that that they have to relearn math? They have to relearn how to read and write. They have to relearn science. They have to relearn all of these different things. Why can't they retain that information?
Why when somebody gets a brain injury, do they often need to relearn things?
Well, we're talking about somebody who's dead, and we're talking about their mind being transferred into another person's body. If their mind is being hold on a minute. A mind is not physical. All right. If the person's mind is going into another body, you need to hear this, okay? Then that means they retained everything that they learned in that first life. If they retained everything in that first life and they're living in another body, they should be able to remember all those things. Why don't they remember those things?
If your argument's true, then brain injuries shouldn't require somebody to relearn things when they recover.
A brain and the mind is not the same thing. A brain is a physical thing living inside of your body. A mind is not.
You go from one body to a new body, you get a new brain. You get a brain injury.
Memories are also not physical. Hold on a minute. Memories are also not physical. Okay, if you die, okay.
So then why can a brain injury cause people to lose memories?
We're not talking about a physical body going into a physical body. We're talking about someone's soul. Let's do some definitions here, just so that we're not being intellectually dishonest here. Okay, the soul is and you can tell me if you agree with this. That is the immaterial aspect or the essence of a human being. Do you believe that that's what a soul is? You're not talking to T-Jump now. I'm a Christian. I actually do believe a soul exists. So answer the question, okay? Is a soul the immaterial aspect or essence of a human being? Yes or no?
Sure, that's one way you could say it.
What is the definition of a mind?
The mind is the thing that does the experiencing and thinking, observing.
Right. The mind also is what retains all of these memories and everything. I think me and you both can agree with that. So if you got a person's soul and it has a mind and they're conscious and they're going into another body, you know what I mean? Then they should be able to retain all that information. And this is important now. If they don't have a mind, okay, if a person loses the ability to remember all these things, then where is your claim about them going to sleep and having dreams about their past life? It's a contradiction in terms. T-Jump was correct in his opening statement.
I don't think you understand the way my counter to your argument based on brain injuries derails your whole point. If your point was true, then a brain injury, you respond to it by saying, we're not talking about a physical brain. It's like, well, okay, we're talking about the mind, but a person who suffers a brain injury loses the ability to recall memories. They can lose the ability to perform certain actions. They can need to learn motor skills from scratch. And if this is just what happens with the same body with a slight brain injury, then why would we not have to learn things over again in a new body?
See, here's the thing. I don't have a problem with your brain. I don't have a problem with your brain injury argument. But if you're going to make the brain injury argument, then you got to stop talking about how they had these dreams and they remember everything. Again, we're talking about immaterial
you got to connect those two ideas.
Hold on a minute.
All right,
hold on a minute. No, I don't.
One sec.
No,
hold
I
on
don't.
a second.
Okay,
G-Man, if you're able to hold on a second, I'm talking. Is it G-Man? If you're able to pull the mouthpiece just a little bit further away from your mouth, just because
I apologize. I'm doing that now.
Louder.
I'm doing that now.
Bring it down along your chin line too. It gets less.
Yeah. So we said that the soul is the immaterial.
Okay, it's definitely, if you can pull it away even further.
Okay, doing it now. Is that better?
That's better if you talk at
okay,
that
so
level.
I'll talk a little bit lower now. Okay.
Thank you.
So if the soul is the immaterial aspect of the essence of a human being, it's not material. It is immaterial. Can't use the brain no more because the brain is a physical thing. Okay, we're talking about the mind. The mind is the element of a person that enables them to be aware of the world and the experiences, to think and to feel, the faculty of consciousness and thought. That is what a mind is according to the dictionary. Okay, if that is being transferred into someone else's body, they should be able to retain all of the life experiences like you guys claim that they have, which is why people are able to dream and remember all of these things. You take that away, that person doesn't have the ability to do those things, and you refuted your own argument.
Okay,
It's something that is used in a lot of false religions.
My ears are bleeding. So, G-Man, you said that several times. Their response was perfectly legitimate. The fact that you can be reincarnated doesn't necessarily entail that you're reincarnated with all possible memories. The fact that you assume that's the case doesn't make it true. So your assumption about souls returning all memories isn't actually evidence. It is possible to have reincarnation with partial memories. But his Arjuna's refutation actually refutes his own position in a way, because if your brain can damage your memories, then it should also damage your past memories too. So there's no reason to think that your memories of language or math are in any way different than your language of past traumas or whatever. And so,
well, again, I was arguing.
Wait. So, unless Arjuna can present some feature of the brain that can actually do this beyond just physical
but
stuff.
But that's not my argumentation, though.
No, this is my.
But that's not my argumentation, though. Hold on a minute. This is my argument, and I know what I'm doing with it.
We give you a chance. I do want to give Tom a chance to respond to Arjuna as well, though.
So, unless Arjuna can show that there's some mechanism by which these souls can actually retain memories other than physical stuff, then there isn't any reason to believe that is the case. And since we do have nothing but physical stuff evidence, then it seems more plausible to think that his argument that physical damage can damage the brain would also apply to memories of the past, which would then invalidate his argument, just as it does G-Man's.
But that's not my argument, though. See, I'm arguing from the Christian worldview. I'm not arguing from the worldview of materialism. Okay, I'm arguing from a totally different argument, from a totally different perspective. All right. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, me and the reincarnationists, SIdharth and Arjuna, I can't pronounce your name, Arjuna. We both agree that souls exist. I have no issue with that. Okay. We both have an understanding that when our souls leave our bodies, our consciousness goes with that. We both agree with that. But we also agree that our souls retain our memories and our thoughts. Okay. If that is not the case, okay, and they're saying that, okay, you got a soul that's filled with trauma and is injured, which is not possible, because there's no way for those two to even measure how a soul could be injured mentally or anything like that to go into another person's body. You know what I mean? The argument still doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So I'm going to ask my question again. Okay. If you're saying that a soul, that a soul leaves a human body, and we're going to keep using a human, because if we use another animal, it just ain't going to make no sense at all. You know what I mean? If it leaves a human body and then it goes to live in another human body, and you're telling me it keeps bits and pieces, you know what I mean? Where they remember going to the bathroom one time in their life, or they remember going to the store in their life.
No, they don't remember
random
bits and pieces. They remember emotionally deep cutting events. It's the depth of the Sanskrit word is samskara. So impressions, subtle impressions are carried over. The deeper the impression, the more likely it is to be carried over. So it's only these really deep impressions from trauma which we tend to see being carried over. It's only those cases where we have cases for reincarnation. Yeah, like I said, you're trying to pigeonhole the metaphysics here. So you've got your metaphysics. Your metaphysics don't work for reincarnation. Fine. We're offering a different metaphysics. Your metaphysics also doesn't work for brain injuries, because you think that there's one mind going from before the brain injury till after the brain injury, except
that's not my claim, that's yours. That's not my claim, that's yours.
You think that it would be the same mind going from one body to the next. It would also be the same mind going from the uninjured brain to the injured brain. So why do we see a loss?
Your claim is not that the brain is injured. I can actually go and read to you what you believe about karma and what you believe about reincarnation. It's not a brand new brain, because if it's a brand new brain, then you don't have the memories of your past life. It is a contradiction in terms.
And then I don't want to spend too much time on this. On T Jump's point, the reason why it's not a problem is because on my understanding, the brain is what gives us access to cognitive abilities. So we do get cases of people remembering things which they previously didn't remember, and near-death experiences. So you can hear so many stories of people having near-death experiences where they remembered details from their childhood. They remembered being born. They remembered the first time their father was excited with them. They remember emotionally important events. And these were things that they had no memory of ordinarily, and they only remember them when they're having a life review and a near-death experience. So we have that as evidence that things that people couldn't remember can be remembered in a non-physical state. Of course, I don't know if SIdharth has any specific examples where some of those memories are corroborated, but the point is just to show a principle and how it could be possible and possible metaphysics. What we're arguing for today is evidence for reincarnation, not an entire ontology. We're proving every detail of it. So we have cases, G-Man keeps calling it dreams. We're not talking about dreams. We're talking about, like, in the case of Kum Verma, she remembered, it's not like somebody saying, I remember, I was killed in New York in the streets. It's like, okay, well, there's 50 people killed in New York in the streets every month, right? I'm just making this number up. So obviously, if we find a person who somewhat matches a vague statement like that, then it's like, well, they're just imagining things and they've given a vague enough story in order for us to corroborate it. But Kum Verma described that she remembered that in her previous life, she worked with a hammer. She was describing the fact that her son's name in the life, the fact that he worked with a hammer, her grandson's name, the town her father had lived in, personal details such as having an iron safe at home, a sword hanging near the cot where she slept, and a pet snake that she said milk to. Those are really precise details. And we also have them showing special abilities in the form of when they're taken to the place where they allegedly lived in the past life. They can, once they're in that town, they can walk all the way through the town, down the back alleys and find their old home. They can walk into the house and walk all the way around the house and say, that was the bedroom. Oh, they've renovated. They put a wall here. They can call out all these details, which, the parents didn't know any of these details. How could the parents have trained the child to know how to navigate that city?
Well, how did you know the parents don't know any of those details?
Well, they'd never been to that town before.
How do you know that?
Because of the record kept by the neutral persons who was walking along them and finding the persons. Now you can say, how do we know? How do we know that's correct? Again, we're questioning, all these 2,500 cases are all fraud. Everybody except you, who's sitting on a chair across this YouTube channel, is the only person who can say truth.
No,
everybody in the world.
You said there were 25.
Else,
you said there were like 25 of these third-party cases, right?
What? There are 33 cases which are third-party cases, but the 2,500 cases recorded by Stevenson's team.
Right. So there's 33 cases where some third party met a family at some point. He hasn't been with them their entire life. Like, they met the family, and there's this kid who has this story. Yeah. So when the third party meets the family, the kid already has the story.
Yeah.
So how does the third party not know that the family already was at the city, already brought their kid there, already taught them all this stuff to say about the house?
But they haven't yet, nobody, when they go and find that person, previous person, their family, They have not yet heard about the kid. They have not heard about that family, and they've not heard about the case. They're hearing for the first time from the third party.
What,
So we have to take somebody's what they're saying, and that's how it goes in court. You have a bunch of witnesses which make a claim that I saw this person kill this person.
Can you say that one more time? I wasn't following your order. So the third party meets the family.
Yep. And then third party goes on an investigation and finds and discovers the previous personality which the kid was talking about, discovers it, and then brings the kid and the family to meet the previous person whom they were talking about.
Yep.
For the first time.
And then Arjuna mentioned that they could walk through the cities and find their home and all that stuff. So my question was, how do we know that the parents hadn't already taught this to the kid before the investigation started?
I mean, you can try it, teaching a 3-year-old kid that these are the persons whom you have to call as Mishri. This person is Maggie. This person is your wife, and you have to go and hug her. And you're it's a 3-year-old kid, and you have to act like you're meeting them for the first time. And when we meet them, we're going to walk through the streets. And hey, on the other side, that family, you have to act as if we have never met before. That's a lot of acting happening for no money to be earned for proving the religious belief to a third person whom nobody cares about. I mean, there is a lot of, it's possible. Everything is possible in T-Jump's imaginary world. But, we're just talking about practical stuff here.
Well, again, all religions start with no reward. People are just making stuff up for no reason and they don't get any reward. So that's not surprising at all. But so why would that explanation be less plausible than reincarnation?
Well, because whenever you find evidence for, say, somebody has stolen something, and a person comes and says, I have seen this person steal 500 rupees from that corner of the house, and he was wearing these pairs of shoes and these pair of cloth, and he did it this time, and you go and later find out 500 rupees are missing, and the other person is carrying the same piece of cloth and shoes. He went and came in that car. That's how you do court cases. In a court, you consider the amount of evidence which is in the favor of person not lying but trying to say things truly. So here you have a bunch of 50 people, 20 people from one family, 20 people from other family who are trying to give witnesses. This is the kid who used to recount these things right from his birth, and he's doing that for a long time, and we don't know whom he's talking about, whom she's talking about, and he's giving these many details about the previous person. We don't know what's happening. And a person comes and records it, goes and finds that person, and then takes the kid later there and verifies everything in front of the kid. And they all are lying just to make a show for reincarnation, for proving the religious belief to their own family members. They're all doing this as a show, but they're not earning a penny. They're all doing it as a show. I'm not sure what the kid is gaining from all this stuff.
Well, like all religions. But so in a court case, testimony is never accepted as evidence of anything that lacks an empirical basis. So miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, supernatural, UFOs. No amount of testimony is ever going to be evidence of any of those things because it lacks precedent, to use the court case terminology. So in a court case, using your own example, everything you just said would be thrown out of a court case. Like this isn't evidence of anything because you don't have actually anything beyond psychological phenomenon in people, which can all be explained by the parents taught it to them. So I don't see how the structure of your argument follows here. Like in the court case, this all gets thrown out.
Well, why is this paranormal?
Reincarnate, because there's no evidence of anything beyond physical stuff in the brain.
That's the question. This is evidence.
No, so there's no prior evidence, no precedent, no past examples of anything outside of physical stuff in the brain to use as a basis to make your argument in a court case. And so that would not be, you would have to actually establish that before you could say someone had testimony, therefore there is this extra physical thing.
Because you're saying that because there has never been any evidence for reincarnation, we can never produce any evidence for reincarnation. Is that what you're saying?
No, so because there's no evidence of a non-physical part of the brain, it's supernatural. That's what you asked, is why would this be considered supernatural?
Well, that's something. Why is it supernatural? How do you define supernatural?
It's just a categorization of saying something that doesn't have an empirical basis yet. So there's no empirical basis yet. So it would just
that's not what supernatural means, though. Supernatural is something that science can't really explain.
It's
And
more
this
about
happens
the
all
court
the
case
time.
labels. This is more about the court case label. It's not about actually the ontology here. So how would a court case determine if testimony would or would not count as evidence for a phenomenon? It would be if that phenomenon has an empirical basis prior to this event, then it would count as evidence. If it doesn't, then it would not count as evidence.
So part of your objection is an accusation of lying, because there's a lot of people involved here that are saying, we know this person hasn't been to this village before. We know that they weren't told these things. So there's a degree of saying, oh, all these people must be lying, which becomes like, okay, well, if we can just take a research study and say, oh, that's just full of lies, then we can do that to anything. How do we know Arthur Eddington actually recorded what he said he recorded and provided evidence for general theory of relativity? Maybe he just wrote it down because it was more exciting to tell people that's what he recorded.
Because there was an empirical basis for all of that stuff. So testimony is reasonable to believe if there's an empirical basis. It's not if there's no empirical basis.
Begging the question that's having a different scale of evidence for things that you already believe in, and then for things you don't already believe in.
Well, I'll say this. I'll say this about the testimonies of the people who give, their stories about reincarnation. As long as what they're saying makes logical and rational sense, then I would be okay with it.
You haven't shown. You kept giving your opinion that you think it's illogical, but you haven't shown us any way in which it is illogical.
I think we have. But I will grant you that if you, no, I'm being serious, but I will grant you that if you can share something that makes logical sense, I will be willing to accept what you have to say. But basically what you're presenting is, and I'll correct myself from earlier, you're saying that these people are having flashbacks or dreams or whatever regarding them having an emotionally during an emotional important event or whatever, right? This is what you're saying that they're having, right? And you're saying that this is proof of reincarnation. I'm telling you from the Christian, I don't know about the atheist worldview, but from the Christian worldview, those ideas get implanted in their heads by demons. And this is what Christians actually believe.
Can you reply to
I don't know where you're getting that from. I'm sorry, say that again.
If demons can plant memories, then how do I know demons haven't planted my memories of everything prior to last Thursday?
I never said they didn't.
Okay.
I never said that they didn't. And
I think that's an absurdity.
And it depends on what the memories are, because we have a Bible for that to tell us what kind of things it would plant into your mind.
The people that remember seeing Jesus resurrected, maybe demons just planted their memories of seeing Jesus resurrected. I mean, you really
that would be a really good argument. That would be a really good argument, sir, if we didn't have secular and non-secular evidence for the resurrection.
No, all of them, the secular and the non-secular, all had their memories planted by demons.
I'm sorry, sir. 500 eyewitnesses, an atheist lawyer doing an investigation. You don't want to have that discussion with me. I assure you of that. All right.
Your epistemology doesn't even allow me to know that last week existed. And you want me to believe that Jesus was resurrected?
Yes, it does. I'm just telling you, we're focusing on these emotionally important events that they supposedly remembered. Okay. And then that's it. It's like little bits and pieces that they remember. I'm telling you that those ideas could have been planted into their heads. Now, you can sit there and laugh at it and think it's funny all you want, but it's a better explanation than you telling me that somebody went to bed and they remember what happened in Julius Caesar's bathroom or whatever, when he slipped and fell and hit his head, when none of us were there to verify it, to see anything like that happens. And then you calling it reincarnation. No, it could be a demon that was there that can easily put that into somebody's head to try to push the idea of reincarnation. I know it's funny to you, but what I'm saying right now refutes what you're saying right now.
Demons is not a bad explanation here. Demons not a bad explanation here. But to clarify,
I'm arguing from hold on a minute. I'm arguing from a Christian perspective. I'm not arguing from an atheist perspective. If I was going to argue like you, I would just sit here and be a denialist like you've been doing all night. But I'm not doing that. All right.
Anyway, you admit that a demon could have planted all my memories of everything prior to last Thursday. I think that basically destroys your argument. Let's move on.
No, it doesn't. But I'll agree to disagree with you. I'll agree to disagree.
Let's go back to Jump. You were saying, Jump, that in case of Arthur Eddington, you're saying there's an empirical basis to it. Can you explain that? What do you mean by that?
Things that have a past empirical basis, like things that have already been shown to not be imaginary, that exist. You can say, I saw a dog. That would be reasonable to believe, anybody's to believe your testimony that you saw a dog, because there's past evidence, empirical evidence that shows dogs aren't just a figment of your imagination. But if you said, I saw a unicorn, that wouldn't be evidence because we have no evidence that unicorns exist outside of someone's imagination. So their imaginary testimony would not be a sufficient basis to conclude they are. So until you have some independent...
What do you mean? I'm asking on that. What do you mean by there's an empirical basis somebody seeing dog in the past? What is? Can you explain that? What do you mean empirical basis? Can you use some other word instead of empirical there?
So like we have their DNA, their phylogeny, their taxonomy, what they're allergic to, how to train them, the physical genetic makeup, their bone structure, their fur, skins. We have like actual physical empirical data that they exist outside of our imagination. So there is stuff that exists outside of our imagination that shows they exist.
So you mean to say, as long as they have a physical body, it's not, I think empirical is the wrong word to be put there. Probably you want to say, as long as they have physical body, then you're ready to believe that they exist. Otherwise, they don't exist. No,
well, it's not about a physical body.
Because you just said phylogeny, DNA, those are all physical body.
Yeah, because those are things we have. Like we only have examples of physical stuff that exists. We have no evidence of non-physical stuff. But if there was if someone cast, like if we had Harry Potter as a real thing, and people could cast spells, and we knew they could cast spells, and we had like a big past history of people casting spells, and then someone said, "I saw Voldemort cast a spell and kill somebody," that would work too because it has a past empirical basis. So it's not about necessarily, it doesn't require physical stuff. It's just that's the only stuff we actually have past evidence of existing right now.
So here we're using empirical in a sense. It's something which has happened in the past a number of times and has been recorded in the past a number of times. Is that
no,
using empirical?
Something that has been demonstrated to not be imaginary in the past.
Well, okay. And then so how would you establish, let's say the case of casting a spell. I think that's much more closer to our example. So how would you establish in the case of casting a spell that has an empirical basis to it?
If it successfully made novel testable predictions in the past.
So that means that somebody casts a spell, and before casting a spell, they tell, when I cast a spell, this pillar is going to go down. And if that happens, here you go, that this pillar went down. That means the casting of spell worked. Is that correct?
Yeah. If you could do that consistently and on a large enough basis, yes, that would definitely count.
Well, again, large enough to be a very odd number. Even if somebody could do that a few times, I would say, that's pretty good for me, but I'm not sure what number you're looking for. Is the number 1,000, 1,000,000? Then you would accept it?
It depends on the cases. Like if you said, I could generate a gold brick every single time and you do it 30 times in a row in any condition everywhere across the world and other people can reproduce it, that's good enough. So if you can give a methodology to...
Got it. So in your case, what you're saying is that as long as we can show that reincarnation can be in some sense repeated in an experimental setting where a person says, hey, I'm going to reincarnate as this person, and then he's able to do that, and that happens consistently a few times and is recorded, the testimony is recorded before and after, something like that, then you will accept that.
Yeah, novel prediction. So that would be an example of a novel prediction, but any kind of novel predictions would count.
So now in the case of reincarnation, it's a little difficult because as my friend just shared, usually it's a case of reincarnation where somebody can remember the past life. Is the case where people have some trauma. Now you really can't, plan out a trauma in somebody's life. Hey, I'm going to, get shot by a gun, and then I'm going to, just before dying, somebody can say, hey, I'm going to take birth as this person, and voila, he born like that. So it's very difficult. But there has been a couple of cases of reincarnation recorded by Ian Stevenson. Specifically, this case, I'm trying to remember, is from Alaska. I'll find you the names later. Of this person who told his wife, because he was, having some life-threatening disease, he told his wife that I'm going to take birth as the son of your sister. And he also told what his features would be and what he would do, that when he takes as birth as a son, he will remember his past life, and he will tell you about this. And he did that, and there's a good record for that. But again, in the case of reincarnation, it's difficult in some sense to record testimony, because as we go forward in the modern world, there's technology, there's social media, and it's becoming more and more difficult to maintain privacy, which is important in order to make the case, in order to make a strong case, because you can always look up things online, and you can always make a case. This person may have looked up the details of the other person online, or this parent may have looked up a case of the person online. But we do have a good case to be made in the case of mediumship. That's why I shared that evidence also in the beginning, where, let me repeat the experiment setup again quickly in 30 seconds, that you have a medium, you have a sitter, and you have an experimenter. the sitter tells the name of a person who is deceased in this life, just the name itself, but the sitter doesn't know whom he's giving the name to. The medium comes to know about the name only, and he or she gives the reading. Now that reading is duplicated by some third party, like some other person, and it's changed up with other bunch of stuff. And those two readings are given to one, the original one coming from the medium, and the second, the decoy one coming from the medium. And they both are given to the sitter to rate whether any of them meet the details of the previous personality he was asking about. And these details are not just details like, he was a happy guy or slow guy, very, concrete, quantitative details. And Weinberg Research Center, led by Dr. Julia, has done thorough research on this. And they did this experiment with a bunch of 33 mediums. And they did 60 cases each time. And they repeated the experiment number of times. Number of other people also repeated the experiment. And in each of these cases, they found significant evidence that the mediums were able to share details of the previous personality or the discarnate person, much more significantly than the baseline. So in this case, you have an experiment set up.
Well, then they should have won the James Randi Challenge and won $1 million, but they didn't. Probably fake.
What is the James Randi Challenge?
The James Randi Challenge is an offer for $1 million for anybody who can demonstrate any kind of reincarnation, supernatural, anything, and they'll give you $1 million. So if that had actually worked, they would have won $1 million. So it's
now the post has changed. Previously, the post was we have to make a case, empirical case. Now you're saying that the case is that they have to win James Randi Challenge, prove it to them.
No.
So again, the post keeps on changing. Okay, that's fine.
You can make up a story that sounds nice, but there's nothing to actually verify it. Like it failed every single scientific test. Like this is not
I tell stories and
scientific.
I tell stories and you tell facts. That's correct.
Yep.
This is a published paper done by researchers where they controlled it, and other researchers said they used good method. The fact that it hasn't run some prize from the Randi organization, that's like an argument from authority. If it were true, then they would have received $1 million from this organization.
Well,
we don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. So I didn't literally mean it had to win that specific challenge. The argument here is that if it did discover some entirely new ontology, you would have won a Nobel Prize. You would have had extremely well anointed by all kinds of scientists. It fails because it just can't do that. Can't be replicated. Doesn't work. All of the subsequent tests fail. It has never been shown to be the case.
It has been replicated by another group of researchers from Paris. I can give you the name of the scholars too. Now, the question is, now we are going in a different realm. So the first argument was, can we make an empirical case? We presented that. Now the question is,
the answer is you can't.
Now you're changing it. Now you're saying that
I haven't changed anything. Now you're saying that it should convince everybody or majority of scientists. That's what you're saying. No. By empirical basis, it has to be repeatable by the experts in the field. If you can't convince them, you don't have an empirical basis.
Well,
the fact that you make up a story isn't an empirical basis.
They repeated. I can give you the name of the scholars.
So tell the experts in the field, convince the experts, win a Nobel Prize, and they'll be like, "Yep, you're right." Okay. Go ahead, Arjun.
Your argument is a misunderstanding of the nature of scientific paradigms and how people operate according to a paradigm, and their skepticism is far higher towards things that don't fit the paradigm.
Because
one day the paradigm shifts. When germ theory was proposed, it was rejected so badly that the person who proposed it ended up with mental illness because of how badly they were treated. Now it's widely accepted, but it didn't cotton on very quickly.
That's because of religious dogma. It doesn't exist now. So now, if you present it and you can demonstrate it, you win. Like no one cares. That stigma doesn't exist today.
People didn't stop being religious just because they gave up religion. People are just religious about different things. I mean, have a look at the left in America right now. They're just as religious without religion. They're just
all I want to know is what the heck is a traumatized soul? That's all I want to know.
Well, first thing is,
what is a traumatized soul and what is a traumatized mind?
There's no conspiracy or bias in science. If you had demonstrated it, they wouldn't reject it on bias. So that's just what is it? Paranoia? Conspiracy theory in science to reject your interest? No, it's just your information is bad.
It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a dialectical response to what you said.
What exactly is a traumatized mind? What exactly is a traumatized mind when somebody's not alive no more?
The trauma, it leaves an impression on the soul. Just like anything leaves an impression on the soul. Trauma is just
show how. Prove it.
That's what the evidence of people who remember past lives and have birthmarks that match.
No, that's the claim. That's the claim. Prove that
the
a soul.
There's documented
prove
cases
that a
of this
soul.
stuff.
No, we don't have documented anything
Well,
about
what
that.
would evidence look like?
Prove that souls can be traumatized to the point that they lose all of their memories when they're dead and they're transferring from one body to another. And better yet, because I know me or T-Jump hasn't talked about this. Me and T-Jump hasn't talked about this yet. Can you prove to me? Can you introduce me anybody that used to be a dog, that their past life was a dog or a cat or whatever? Do you have any evidence for that?
We're not claiming to have evidence for that. We're just saying there's some amount of evidence for reincarnation. We've given very specific examples. We're not defending
so you don't have
that people
so
have
you
been
don't
animals in previous lives.
So you never heard of a testimony of somebody having a dream about sniffing another dog's crotch?
Yeah, there are people who remember past lives as animals. That is there, but we're not making a case for that today. We're not claiming to have strong evidence for that. We're claiming to have evidence for reincarnation.
So how do you know that a soul can be traumatized? We're both, well, yeah, I might as well say we're both theists. So how do you know that a soul can be traumatized to the point that they lose all their memories? We as Christians, we believe that when a person dies, all of their memories, everything that they are, goes and stands before Almighty God.
Yeah, well, that's your belief. We're talking about evidence here today.
I understand that. Where is your evidence? That's what I want to know.
The evidence is the cases we presented of people who have memories and accuracy and birthmarks and behaviors and emotions which match a previous life.
No, those things are presupposed as being in previous lives. There's no proof that they came from previous lives.
We're not claiming
where's the evidence
to have
for that?
Evidence.
Okay, so where's the evidence then? Where is it?
So when you have somebody who remembers a past life of somebody who died with a bullet wound, they have emotions that match the person. They have a grudge with somebody who owed them money. They have a grudge with sometimes in one case, the person tried to kill when they were young, the person who killed them in the previous life. That the emotions match the previous life. And that the birthmarks match, and they know detailed information about this life that they couldn't have known otherwise. This is the kind of evidence.
I had a dream that I went into the Black Lion to form Voltron. It doesn't mean that I was part of the Voltron force, or I lived the life of a person who was part of the Voltron force. Doesn't mean that I had a dream that I was Freddy Krueger. That one day, in a past life, I was Robert Englund. Going for the role of a Nightmare on Elm Street.
You're straw manning the evidence.
I'm not straw manning.
Can you respond to the actual evidence that we're presenting?
You're not presenting any evidence. You're making a claim. That's what you're doing. You're not presenting any evidence.
If you're going to straw man us, then there's nothing for me to reply to. Let's see if someone
there's no proof of reincarnation. You need to just admit it. It's a faith-based claim that you believe that these people are having these dreams. You believe that they're, sharing their emotionally important events that happened in the past life, and you're calling it reincarnation. You know what I'm calling it? I'm calling it a bad observation, a bad explanation for what they're talking about. All right. Do you have actual evidence that can be measured, that can be that can be shown over and over and over again, that would prove that reincarnation is actually true?
So I'm not following G-Man here. Like, yeah, if you could actually show,
you're not supposed to follow me. This is a theist to theist discussion here. I'm just trying to ask him to give me the evidence there. So I don't want you answering for him. I don't want you answering for him. I want him to answer himself. I want him to answer.
So it would be
James. I want him to answer my question, James. I just want him to answer my question.
I'd like to comment here. So it would definitely.
I would like for him to answer the question and not you.
Let's see. How about we, given that the question was directed toward Arjuna, why don't we give Arjuna a chance to respond first, and then Tom, if you want to add to that, you're welcome to.
All right. So G-Man is just flat straw manning our evidence repeatedly over and over again. He's almost not even worth replying to. So I found the numbers that I mentioned to my opening. So that when Ian Stevenson did his research, he broke up a human body into 160 equal size squares with a grid so that he could give statistical probabilities to the chances of the birthmarks corresponding to wounds on the body of the deceased individual. So the chance of having a single birthmark corresponding to a wound on the previous individual is 1 in 160. When you have a bullet entry and exit wound, it becomes 1 in 160 times 1 in 160. So the chances become 1 in 25,000. And we're not just talking about like going all over the globe and finding any one person who has any bullet wounds which correspond to this individual. We're talking about someone who has emotions and memories which correspond to details of an individual who's already been identified. So we've already narrowed it down at this point.
Okay, so those numbers are absolutely wrong. The 160 times 160 is false. That would assume that a bullet entry wound could then exit at any of the other 160 locations in the body, which is obviously false. Like if you have a bullet entry wound at your head, it's not going to exit at your toe. So the stats there are just obviously false. Like you wouldn't times 160 by 160 there. But I mean, yes, what you guys...
No, wait, I mean, with the bullet, but we're talking about the birthmarks. The birthmark can be literally anywhere.
No. Well, like remember, there's a bullet entry wound and a bullet exit wound. And so if the bullet entry wound matches, that would be a 1 in 160 chance. And then if the bullet exit wound matches, you said the number to calculate that would just be another times 160, but that would be false because you wouldn't have the bullet wound. The bullet wound couldn't exit at any of the other points in the body. There's a specific amount that they could potentially exit from. And so it wouldn't actually be 160 times 160. The math there would just be wrong. But I do want to say that, yes, what you guys are presenting would be evidence if it could be corroborated. Absolutely. That if you could show that kids gained information that couldn't have been gained in any other way, that would count as evidence. The problem is that all the information you present can be gained in other ways that are far simpler.
Well, they were simpler, but if the family lived close by, they're far simpler. If it was a kid who was not more than 3 years old, they're far simpler if the kid is asked to identify persons of the other family. They're far simpler if the kid was not asked to show the emotions. So for all these different reasons, whether it be behavior, the persons, the location, the distances, and the events leading up to it, we are asking a 3-year-old kid to be as smart as an adult. Even as an adult, I will fail to exactly replicate what is being asked by a 3-year-old kid, unless I have lived that life in the past myself. So, going back to the point, I presented another set of evidence which has been done in an experimental lab, and you pointed that you will accept an evidence only when it is accepted whenever it can win the Nobel Prize. If that's your standard of how research should be done, then practically every paper which is published, as if it's a Nobel paper, they all have to win Nobel Prizes. I guess we should start a Nobel Prize committee for every paper which makes an extraordinary claim.
Well, that's not the only thing required. Is that you have to get the consensus of experts in the field to accept your work. The people who are qualified to assess whether or not what you're saying is true have to say, yes, it's true. And that has not occurred.
Who are experts in this field of reincarnation? Which scientists are expert?
The people who publish in fields regarded to psychology, neurology, biology, any scientific field that shows this is not a thing. So could this be explained by psychology? Yes. Could it be explained by fraud? Yes. They would all have to look at the information you have to publish in those fields and be like, yeah, these are not better explained by these other things. You mentioned that it'd be easier if you made the kids not have adult level skills. Again, there are Asian kids who can play violin better than most adults. This is not a terribly hard thing to explain. But yeah, so you would need to actually convince the experts in all of the fields of actual science that this is a real thing and not just...
Well, I asked you which part. You said psychology. So in the field of psychology, this is already an established understanding that these, whether it be out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, or mediumship, it's something which they accept as something which they can't explain. They don't claim that it is all fraud. That's not the opinion of the majority understanding.
Well, absolutely, that's totally true. Just like wait. Just like in the field. Wait.
I didn't finish. Whereas you are claiming it to be all fraud, or it can be explained by psychology. That's not their opinion.
So in psychology, it can be explained as being an unknown psychological feature. We don't know exactly which psychological feature, but psychological features can explain every single one of the points of data. Just like a UFO can be explained by lots of different things. Like it can be explained by a plane. Did we know for sure it was a plane? No. So all of the features you explained can be explained by known psychological phenomenon. Do we know particularly which exact phenomenon occurred in that case? No, that's why it's considered unknown. So none of the consensus in psychology does not agree that near-death experience or reincarnation actually occur. They explain that, well, we don't know exactly what's going on there, just like we don't know the origin of life. But yeah, the consensus is it's natural.
Well, the consensus is that that there is no current understanding, no current paradigm which can explain it. But can we say that it's unnatural? Well, we cannot say, because we can never rule out all the natural causes. So given that the definition which you give it to supernatural, that creates a problem. You're saying, since everything is natural, there can never be any supernatural. So and a case can never be made for
I
a
didn't say that.
supernatural case. And that's what you're saying indirectly. You're saying that
No.
because the psychologists are saying that we don't have a natural explanation for it, and since in the past we haven't ever used a non-natural explanation for anything, that means in the future we don't need to use any non-natural explanation for it. That means in future we may be able to provide an explanation for it. So
No.
forget about all this evidence.
No, it just requires that you present novel testable predictions, like every novel thing invented into any scientific field. So if you could present novel testable predictions, which you said can't be done for reincarnation, because like all things that it can't be done for, it's probably just imaginary and not real.
Well, that's why I bought the case of mediumship, because that has been done in an experimental lab, and it's novel, predictable predictions there.
Okay, so demonstrated to the consensus of field in psychology and actual science, then
they accept it. It's published widely in field of psychology.
Published doesn't mean accepted by the consensus. Published means published. So there's lots of things that are published that are not accepted by the consensus.
Well, let's ask you, what is the criteria for you to accept something? There's scholars who are publishing, who are psychologists themselves, who are belong to different schools in different parts of the world, and they're publishing it regularly and they're doing these experiments regularly. I'm asking you, what is the problem with the experimental setup? You don't have a problem. I'm asking you, are the scholars...
No. I explain this. Let me say, so the criteria is you have to convince the other experts in the field who are qualified to assess your study. Like, I am not qualified to assess your study. I can't read the study and know what's right or wrong with it. The experts in the field can. You need to convince them. If you convince them, then I'll accept it. Well, you telling me that your study is perfect is not going to convince me your study is perfect.
They accept it.
No, they don't.
How do
they accept it's a published paper? It does not convince anybody. The majority, the consensus of experts says it's complete bunk.
Oh, show me that. Who says that? Mediumship research done by Windberg Research Center is bunk. Show me that. Who says that?
The conclusion is bunk. So that's the part.
No. But show me that. Who says that?
Yes, there's an interview I have with several different psychologists on this topic.
Okay.
So,
what are they saying?
That is bunk. That there's no such evidence of any such thing of reincarnation. Near-death experience is all junk.
No, we're not talking about near-death experiment. I just said mediumship experiment conducted by Windberg Research Center by Julia Bechel.
Well, all research done in the field is bunk. All of it. Every single bit of it.
I didn't say all. I asked you specific. I asked you specific set of experiments of mediumship done in experimental labs with these kind of blind settings.
So I covered that. So if literally all of it is junk and none of it convinces the consensus, that means every single individual example is not sufficient to convince the consensus.
Well, you're assuming in the case of those scholars that they are in some sense omniscient. They know everything. They know what everything they're talking about. I'm pulling up an interview with this first scholar who's saying everything is bunk and I take it for granted. Well, that's not how it works.
No. The people who are experts in the field are experts in the field. Yes, which means they are up to date on all of the most recent research in the field. That's kind of what it means to be an expert. So they're aware of the research done in the field and show, this doesn't work.
Well, the fields of science have become so huge that in this modern day, you really can't claim that a psychologist knows everything or everything else. If that was the case, when you go to a doctor in a hospital, and you're showing them some ailment, they don't claim to know about everything. They say, go to an expert. You go to an expert. They may also say, I'm not an expert in this field. I'm an expert in this field. You go to this specific field and expert.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
To call an expert in the field of psychologists who's saying that all near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences are all false, they're all corrupt. And, I'm an authority and I know about all the evidence, all the research which is happening in this field, and it's all bunk. That's it. That's my statement. And that's how I rule. Well, that's how you don't understand. Science is not such a field where you have, consensus for everything and on each and every topic. These are fields of science which are currently developing. People are trying to understand it. They're trying to understand why mediums are able to produce such findings. They're trying to understand why such experiment, why was this experimental result, why we had this result in the experiment. So instead of being, closed-minded, hey, everything is bunk, anything non-natural is bunk, but being open and trying to understand why this happened, how this happened, and trying to understand it better, that's how the scientists are moving forward. But they're not like closed-minded and just saying, hey, an expert says it is false, everything else is corrupt, everything else will be thrown out.
Right. So I agree with most of what you said there. The problem is that we know a better explanation for that, which is psychological priming, which is why James Randi can replicate all of the results by being just a fake magician, unless you think he's also a medium. So
James Randi hasn't done anything towards this reincarnation research, to my knowledge.
all of it can be replicated by those things. He hired 2 of his students to go in and fake the mediumship and psychic stuff in front of the scientists to prove the point that they can be faked in front of scientists in the same way that is done by the studies.
So the study that Sidharth has quoted, that one couldn't be faked.
Yes, it could.
Literally, not with the methods they used.
Literally any study can be faked. So you can find methodological flaws in these studies. Never perfect.
Okay, tell me what's the fault.
I'd have to look at the study again. You need to ask the people who are experts in the field who are qualified to do this. You need to convince them.
So maybe we can do this again and we can go into the actual studies. We'd actually emailed James with the cases we were planning on presenting in hopes that you guys could.
I'm still going to give you the same answer. You need to convince the experts in the field who are qualified to evaluate this and replicate the studies.
So I've got 2 responses to that. One is I've got 2 quotes here which are positive from experts in the field. So the Journal of the American Medical Association reviewed one of Dr. Ian Stevenson's books in 1975 and stated that in regard to reincarnation, he has painstakingly and unemotionally collected a detailed series of cases in which the evidence is difficult to explain on any other grounds. An additional Carl Sagan, the late astronomer, was very skeptical of non-mainstream work, but wrote, "There are 3 claims in the parapsychology field which in my opinion deserves serious study, with the third being that young children sometimes report details of a previous life which upon checking turn out to be accurate and which they could not have known in any other way than reincarnation." And the other point is I can present a plausible hypothesis that religious people aren't the only people who are religious. Scientists also have views which they like to believe, which they hold strongly, which they're skeptical about evidence against, which they hold different standards when viewing evidence against their views than when viewing evidence for their views. So this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is just human nature. People tend to, confirmation bias, groupthink. Their careers are also dependent on them towing party lines. If somebody comes out and says they don't believe in evolution, they can lose their job at a university, for example. There's a lot on the line. If you can argue for what people want you to argue for, you get promotions, you get grants, and so on. There's so many factors at play. So I'm not saying that I need to prove this. I just need to say this is a plausible hypothesis. Then the debate becomes, let's look at the actual evidence. So
it's not. It's not a plausible hypothesis.
I mean, you can say that, but you'd have to demonstrate. So
I did. So I mean, everything you said is more plausibly explained by their parents psychologically manipulated them, and the studies were manipulated.
No. What I'm saying is a plausible hypothesis is that scientists can have some degree of bias, or there's pressures on them which cause them to say certain things or have certain opinions. That's not a plausible explanation. So again, if there's a better explanation, how is it not plausible?
Because if there's a better explanation for literally all of the data points you said, which is very obvious and known to everyone by everything, like, oh, look, there's a print in the snow. Is it a horse? Yeah, it's a horse. So if there's a more plausible explanation, which has a ton of backing evidence that already exists, then it's plausible to reject it, not based on bias, but based on, we have past evidence that this is the better explanation. So no.
But the way we answer that is by looking at the actual evidence. The hypothesis that scientists can be wrong for sociological reasons or psychological reasons is never a plausible hypothesis.
This is never a good argument.
All I'm doing, I'm just using it in a dialectical sense in order to respond to you saying we need to meet a certain goalpost that you've set. I'm saying we don't need to meet that goalpost. We just need to look at the actual evidences of the case we're presenting. If your hypothesis is true, then we should be able to find errors with the cases we presented, flaws in the methodology, fraud, problems with the evidence. We should be able to find that if your hypothesis is true. If we don't find any errors with the evidence we're presenting, then, and you just want to say, oh, but you haven't convinced the scientific consensus, then my hypothesis posit that the scientific consensus can be
wrong.
Subject to groupthink, psychological biases, and sociological
if I provide you a paper in quantum mechanics and you can't find a flaw in it, does that mean it's right? No, you're not qualified to assess the paper. You need to give the paper to the people who are qualified to assess the paper and convince them. What we do on the stage means nothing. We don't matter. You need to convince the experts in the field, and if you can't do that, that's a good reason to conclude you're wrong. Not bias on the experts. You're just wrong.
So quantum physics is a very different thing from, memories and, the controls on how those memories are recorded and how the data is collected to see if those memories correspond to a previous personality who existed. So if you want to say that you need to be an expert in order to critique the research, then you need to demonstrate that the subject matter is unintelligible to regular people. So can you demonstrate, quantum physics, you can very easily demonstrate that quantum physics is unintelligible to a layperson. Can you demonstrate that the research of Dr. Ian Stevenson is unintelligible.
No,
to a layperson.
unintelligible is irrelevant here. What matters is, can you assess the data and know enough about the background information of how studies are done and how to make them reliable and how P testing is done or P statistics are done and how to make them reliable? You don't know that. You don't know that. I don't know that. It's very complicated to know the methodology to make sure a study is actually rigorous and works. You aren't qualified to do that. I'm not. Scientists are. You need to make them do the work. You need to convince the experts. Whether or not you can understand it makes no difference. You need to be able to know all the background information to make a reliable study and to be able to repeat it. You and me don't have that.
Want to take that one, SIdharth?
G-Man, do you have any thoughts as well?
No, I said everything I'm going to say. T-Jump pretty much dominated the thing. So, I mean, it's all good. They haven't answered none of my questions. So I'm just waiting for them to deal with what I said.
Shortly, we'll go into Q&A, but we'll give you a chance to respond, SIdharth.
Thank you. So T-Jump is making a point that, in order to accept any evidence, we need to convince the majority of an opinion, in regards to an evidence. That's how we can say, in some sense, scientific contributions are made. That, first of all, there's a group of people who make an extraordinary or a claim, and it's accepted by a bunch of researchers. And all the time, if that's holds more value or more explanation than the current paradigm, and that that new paradigm gets holding its base, and it all the time it spreads over and it becomes a majority opinion. Now let's see, can a non-natural explanation really become the majority opinion? Let's see. Now in the case of, we have to look back in the past. In the 17th century, when the scholars, or in the 15th century or 16th century, when scholars were coming together and they were saying that, hey, the earth is the one which is moving around the sun, not the other way. The Christian, who were, the rulers who were, the Christian priests at that time, they were objecting it. And anybody who made a claim against such a statement was shot down. So, is it possible that can we see a similar behavior right now? Because in some sense, the scientists have their tongue in the cheek with this experiment, with this data. Because if in any case, any non-natural explanation comes around and or non-natural paradigm starts getting hold, that would destroy the current scientific paradigm. So, is there some sociological basis to scientists not accepting such an experiment which is done such a thorough manner, and so many cases such a thorough manner? Do they have any sociological bias to not accept such an evidence? Yes, there's a strong case to be made. So do I see that in future a majority of scientists accepting this evidence? I don't expect it, because currently, as Arjun pointed out, there's a huge sociological bias amongst the scientists to not accept anything non-natural. And because they have that motive, I don't see that a majority of scientists accepting such a position. But the open-minded scientists, as Arjun pointed out, are interested in studying this, and they're open to this idea of knowing this. But sorry to say, most of the scientists are not, in an open-minded, case. So they have a bias there, and because of that, I don't expect them to accept these set of experiments, all are done in an amazing manner. All the evidence presented for reincarnation, which has been thoroughly documented in 2,500 cases and continues to be documented further.
With that, we will jump into the Q&A. Also, want to let you know, folks, several things. One in particular, we are going to start doing panels, in particular 6 to 8 people on the show at a time. And so if you happen to love debating, or if you have a channel that you want to get greater exposure, in other words, more awareness that people would hear about it, just like I can say tonight, all of our guests are linked in the description. So if you want to check out their links, you certainly can. Want to let you know about these panels. They're coming soon. And so want to let you know I'm going to post shortly the link for how you can sign up for those panels. Sometimes we'll have panels on politics. Sometimes we'll have panels on religion and atheism topics. And it'll probably be 2 or 3 topics at a time. And we're basically, you could say, is a great opportunity for newcomers who want to get on the show for the first time, just to give, say, kind of a test in terms of whether or not it's a good fit. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So With that, thanks so much for your question. Lover Man Cowboy says, so under reincarnation, do you keep the same personality traits? So like if you defend child abusers when reincarnated, would you still defend child abusers? Like after you're reincarnated and brought back?
So general mentality and attitudes are carried over. It's all the subtle things about a person. So if somebody's, got some kind of addiction in one life, they'll, like an alcoholic has a good chance of being an alcoholic in the next life, and a saintly person will carry their saintly qualities with them into the next life. But, the sort of skills that you build on top of that, you will need to recover back again. So if you have an attitude for success, then you're likely to succeed in the next life, but you're still going to have to build up your success from scratch.
You got it. And thanks very much for this question. Dragnock Silvas says, can G-Man summarize his opponent's arguments? G-Man, what do you think Siddharth and Arjuna would say if you were going to give a gist type of summary?
I cannot answer that question. I have a contract video against them, legal stuff, and I don't want nothing to do with the individual.
Nice save.
This one coming in from Indigo Butterfly 2007 says, G-Man looking cute in his fit. What is fit? What does that mean, G-Man?
I don't know.
Okay, well, you look cute. And Indigo Butterfly strikes again saying, hey, G-Man, what was their main argument and evidence? Also, thanks again for, the money and iPod. Love you.
I have a contract video against Indigo too, so I can't really say anything about her either.
Next up, Displays Gamer. Any contracts? Okay, Displays Gamer says, is knowledge imprinted on the soul or is it stored in the brain? If soul, how does this function work?
Well, you want to answer? There's subtle and gross. So there's on the gross level, you get lots of things stored there. And then on the subtle level, you get the more subtle aspects stored there. So a degree of knowledge is stored in the brain. But then, of course, with near-death experiences, a lot of that also seems to come back. I mean, you get like, what is it? Eben Alexander, who had like his brain completely destroyed and it came back and he had full cognitive functions. So I think more what it is that the physical brain is an instantiation of it, like a gross thing that's formed. So the subtle energy forms the gross. Do you want to comment on that, Siddharth?
According to the Vedas, which we didn't bring in, the model which they present is that there is a soul which has a covering of subtle body, and then there's a covering of gross body. And the soul is a source of, all the initiation. It gives all the energy. And then the subtle body provides, you can say, the programs. And then the gross body provides, further, and instances, as Arjuna is pointing out. So once the gross body is destroyed, according to the Purana, the Vedas, the subtle body can again regenerate, the parts of the gross body if need be. But that only happens, in special cases, very rare cases. But the point being that the subtle body is storing, very, you can say, higher level paradigms or higher level programming, codes there, whereas the gross body is storing something very day-to-day information and data information and stuff like that. In some cases, when as we saw, when there's trauma, somehow the subtle body is also able to collect data from the gross and use that initiation and again begin from that place again. It's a very complex subject matter. I mean, you're invited to study. There's a book called Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which discuss this in detail. If you're interested in that subject, I highly recommend that. Also, another book is Srimad Bhagavatam. You can find that on the website called vedabase.com. And you can read up there. Canto 3 discusses body, subtle body, and gross body. So vedabase.com, Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the book.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. We are going to jump into this next question, which is from I'm Sawi Wilson. Says, are those Rev's headphones? Who is Rev?
I don't know who he is, and I don't know what he's talking about, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, to hell with Rev. All right, next one. Snake was right. Thanks for your question. It says, if you don't retain memories or identity, how is the soul still you? Also explain the mechanisms involved if you can.
Well, the simplest way of defining you would be a continuous first-person experience. So if it's the same you that's having the experience in this life and in the next life, then it would be you. Whatever else is carried over is not so important. The soul is said to have an identity, a spiritual identity, which is covered over. So none of these identities that we have in any of these bodies is actually who we really are. It's just a dressing that we put on. So the fact that we lose a dressing and take on a different one, if I get out of one car and into a different vehicle, I haven't changed who I am. I've just changed the vehicles.
You got it. And thank you very much for this question coming in from Snake Was Right. Says, if you don't retain memories or identity, how is the soul still? No, we got that one. Sorry.
You just asked that.
Mo, thanks for your super chat, which was deleted. Do not attack the guests, attack the arguments, folks. Troll Toll says, pay the troll toll to get the boy's soul. That sounds weird. Is that one of your buddies, Tom? Next up. The next one, the biologist Bum, thanks for your question, says, what happens when the sun burns out in 5 billion years and life on Earth is extinct? Where do our souls go then?
You want to answer, Sidharth?
Yeah, so it's explained that there's a subtle realm known as Mahavishnu, and in that subtle realm, the souls go for like a sleep or like, a period of dormant period or dormancy for next 13 billion years, and 8 billion years, and then they come back and they're given another body and the cycle starts again.
You got it, and thank you very much for this question coming in from Nick James. Says, G-Man, are you being a misotheist to a God who does reincarnations of the souls? Hashtag G-Man, the misotheist.
I don't understand the question.
Yeah, what is a misotheist, G-Man? Did you
I
come
have
up
no
with
idea.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Next up, Git Stanfield says, given the fact there is no clear-cut definition of life nor consciousness at the moment, do the proponents of reincarnation think it's possible to, quote, unquote, come back as algae or a virus? Why or why not?
You want to comment, Sidharth?
Well, we don't have a common understanding of life or consciousness, but we do have an underlying understanding of life and consciousness. We talk about life. We say, you are alive, I'm alive. Are you alive? I think you are alive. So, based on that common understanding, we can talk about, coming back also, because if somebody is alive, he can recall things about his life. He can recall who he is. He can tell where does he live, who are his family members, what does he do. And if a kid is born and at a young age, he's able to recall, things like these, then we can use the word coming back. So I don't see any problem with that. And I agree, we should look into this topic of what is life? What is consciousness? These are good questions. And I'm glad you're thinking about those questions.
You got it. Rev News Radio says, if reincarnation is true, then you might be able to beat Dragnocht in a future life. Tom, do you have some sort of beef with Dragnocht? All right. Farron Salas says, for the sake of the debate, the idea of a quote-unquote soul is granted, but we can substantiate that we even have, but we can't substantiate that we even have souls. Just a friendly PSA.
We can hear you, Candy, Gina.
I found it. What misotheism is, it's the hatred of God or gods.
Actually, I got the answer to the question I was asked earlier by Indigo. She was asking me about what was the topic about. And I just want to show her this. I think she doesn't have none of it. So I just want to show her this real quick.
Right their argument.
Okay. All right, let's keep your personal squabbles out of this. Let's go ahead, SIdharth or Arjuna, if you want to respond while G-Man shows off the Benjamins.
Yeah, something she doesn't have.
You want to go explain the misotheist thing you were saying?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I found a definition of misotheism. It's the hatred of God or hatred of gods. Was that last one a question? That sounded like a comment.
Yeah, more of a comment. Agreed. If you want to respond, you can.
I mean, I want to add one thing in regards to the point being made earlier about being misotheist. I think as a practitioner of Krishna consciousness or Hare Krishna, I'm not opposed to Christianity or other religions. I feel that G-Man doesn't really understand the principles which we were speaking from, and he feels that in some sense we are against his principles or his theism. But as such, we are of the opinion that there is one God and he has many names, and he comes in different parts of the world. So
can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Can
I
respond to that?
Just one thing. So I don't have any hatred for G-Man or all of us, and I think he has to have a little more broader outlook towards what we're trying to present here. Yes, G-Man,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I would like to respond to that. You said that. First of all, are you a Hindu?
I practice Hare Krishna. It's not a Hinduism.
No, okay. I don't believe that you believe in only one God. I believe that you believe in multiple gods, multiple gods.
At least I can say what I believe in, or you want to be having authority on that too.
This one coming in from
Don't
Don.
worry. Don't worry. I'll have something to say about it later. Don't worry about it.
Ooh. And I'll see you in the parking lot afterward. Don Pullman
Not the parking lot. No. I got a YouTube channel and I debunk this garbage all the time. So go ahead.
Juicy. Don Pullman says, G-Man, wouldn't Jesus have been considered reincarnated since he became a different version of his past self after the resurrection?
No, that's not even close to what happened. That's my answer for that.
Brute
That's
Facts
just dumb. That's just dumb. That's not even remotely close to what it is. Okay.
Root Facts Podcast says G-Man only speaks for his version of Christianity.
What is my version of Christianity? That's what I like to know. Everybody like to know what my version of Christianity is. I keep hearing that, but I don't know what it is. It's just about
Me neither.
everybody in sound doctrine believes in it.
Displaced Gamer says
Even James. Go ahead.
Next up, Displaced Gamer says G-Man made great points on how God doesn't exist.
You know, your audience is just phenomenal, James. I get dumber every time I come on this show and talk to your audience. I really do. Your audience is just so dumb. It's not even funny. Anyway, let's continue.
You need to attack the arguments, not the people.
Well, to be
The
fair,
audience, not James, not the people here.
To be
the
fair,
audience.
G-Man, there are a lot of people that are actually not, you could say, G-Man haters, and there are also even people in the audience who are, I saw cheering you on, G-Man. So you can't paint with such broad brushstrokes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about the people that are leaving the comments, obviously. The people that are leaving, asking me about this, that, and the other, their laws,
You got it. Larry Door's Muslim stepdad says, don't make me
If it's not serious, I don't even want to hear it.
Wait, is Larry Door like one of your friends? Like,
I don't even want to hear it if it's not serious. If they ain't got nothing to say about the debate, I'm not even answering. I'm just going to troll them.
Well, hold on. This happens to be very serious, G-Man. Just let me read
All
this, and you can let me know if you think it's serious. This one, coming in from Larry Door's Muslim stepdad, says, don't make me spank you like your sister, G-Man. Okay, I'm sorry. G-Man, come on, it was a joke. We know that you didn't spank anybody. Okay. They also said, G-Man not paying attention is why he got beat. I gotta say, G-Man, I've never had a debater. I hate to give you a third degree here, ganging up on you. I've never had a debater who, in the live chat of his own debate, said the debate is boring. But, well, we'll give you a chance to respond, G-Man.
Yeah, basically it was one person talking. And I was just sitting here listening, and I was listening to the same old, and no disrespect. I mean, actually, can I get about 3 minutes to respond to this, if you don't mind?
Fair.
Yeah, I'm used to debating against atheists, and no disrespect to the people who we're debating. If you would have just said, that science can't explain everything, you would have killed this guy. I don't know why you guys didn't say that to him. You guys should have said that there are other ways of going about proving that things are true, and you guys kept going with the science. So, if I was on your side, that he would have abandoned that science nonsense a long time ago. The moment I would have brought up scientism or whatever. So the bottom line is that I was sitting here listening. Well, I do actually pretty good in my debates with atheists. And honestly, I wouldn't have been talking as long as you guys would have been. I just wouldn't have. I would have presupped them. That's what I would have did. And then it'd been over.
This one coming in from Stanley Williams. By the way, folks, in all seriousness, G-Man, are you still interested in a debate with, I could have sworn I actually had a fellow reach out to me.
I want to debate with T-Jump. I want to debate with T-Jump on whether or not God exists. That's what I want.
Do it.
I want to debate with him whether or not God exists or not. And I want him to try that scientism nonsense with me.
We'll see what we can do. And
I would love to do that. Set that up for next week, please.
Stanley Williams, 19,000 K says, can G-Man steelman his opponent's arguments?
No, he cannot.
Can G-Man do what?
Steelman, in other words, represent Arjuna and Sidharth's arguments
Yes, I
in
can,
the most
but
charitable,
I'm not
strong
going to.
way.
Yes, I
possible.
can, but I'm not going to do it.
Nice.
That's
I have a
my
girlfriend, but she's in Canada.
Why is it? So, G-Man, like, what if we, we give you just like a few, even if it's in a few sentences, like.
No, I can do it, but I'm not going to do it.
Because you stand
That's
Okay.
my
outside.
answer.
General Zonfer says, under reincarnation, if you were a closeted man with bad fashion habits, Stephen Steen, would you come back as out, proud, and stylish? Next up, thanks for your all right. Nobody
Yes,
else.
the
I was
answer-
the only
the
one that took that
answer
one
is
seriously.
yes.
Chris Gammon says, I'm sorry, Arjuna. Are you saying that your current self isn't your real self? And that you used to be someone else who also wasn't you? I don't know, man.
And I don't think that it's that absurd of a concept. I mean, the fact that we are these bodies is really the absurd thing. It's funny. No, so not now. Right now, I'll come in a few minutes. It's funny. Sometimes somebody's giving a Hare Krishna lecture, and there's like some people who are overweight there, and they hear, "Oh, you're not the body," and they're quite relieved. So the idea that we have a spiritual identity, which is far greater than the one we have in this life, is better.
You
My
got
kids
it,
are
Ann.
waiting to go to the beach.
You got it, and we only have several more questions. We're going to cruise through these. Stanley Williams, 19K, says G-Man was the resurrection, not reincarnation.
No, the resurrection is not reincarnation. Reincarnation is when one person dies and their soul goes to be in another body. That's reincarnation. That was the resurrection. It gets confused a lot. The Hebrew Israelites do that a lot. It's a matter of a lot of false religions use reincarnation all the time.
This
So
is
no, it was a resurrection. He rose from the dead. It's not reincarnation, not even close.
Magellan from Singapore says, G-Man, can you roll back the toxic attitude? G-Man, do you think you were toxic?
Do I think I'm toxic?
That you were tonight.
I think that I'm dope. That's what I think I am.
Gotcha.
I think I'm dope.
Based and dope pilled. Someone taught me what a sad boy is. My students taught me what a sad boy is in class the other day. Well, we'll come back to that. Aaron the Savage Sister says, question for the panel, is a contract viable if it's legally not binding in any state or country?
I like to answer that question. Provided that they answer this question. Do atheists exist? That's all I want to know. Do they exist? Yes or no?
Yes.
And are they interested in little kids? And do we have evidence for that? Oh, that's one we need to worry about right there, don't we?
Not as much as Catholics and Christians.
Well, this is one dude named Scientist Sam that you guys
wait,
hear
hold
about.
on. This
And then
debate has
there's the
been
people
civil
that,
while it was civil for a while.
There's
So
several atheists I can
we
bring
must.
up,
No, please don't.
It's like I need Nishan. I think his name is Nishan, I think. Don't even get me started.
Stop.
Don't even get me started.
Stop. I just don't want to get our first strike. We don't have to go there. Okay, this one coming in from Karag Nightwolf. We'll accuse groups of that later. All right. Karag Nightwolf says, I'd rather reincarnation be true than Christianity. I don't know who wants to respond.
That don't surprise me. It's pretty consistent with scripture.
I'm actually
This
working
one
on an
proves the
academic
Bible correct at
paper
that
on
point. Anybody who doesn't believe in Jesus is eventually going to believe that anyway. So go figure.
Me and a friend are working on an academic paper where we argue that reincarnation is a better form of purgatory in theology than the idea that, and then infernalism, where after this body, that's it if you get it wrong, or the Christian universalism, which we can't make sense of, because where, if you're not perfect after you leave this body, where are you going to go? You're just going to go straight to heaven? Are you going to go to another kind of purgatory?
Anyway, David Anthony, you need to listen to that one because that was directed towards you. Anyway.
Then all of G-Man's enemies out there. And Bubblegum Gun says, G-Man, I'm a polytheist. Would you want to debate me?
No.
Next up, you heard it. Correct. Nightwolf says, we got that one. Buddy from the outside chat says, can G-Man give an example of an analogy? What? I didn't even finish it, G-Man.
I'm trying to have fun. No. All my answers to them is going to be no, and it's going to be something weird. So no.
Oh, right. Magellan says, oh, goodness. says G-Man needs to be booted. He is just getting worse now. I have a feeling that came in about maybe 1 or 2 questions ago when G-Man
booted. Yo, I would love for James to give me $1 million. James, boot me, man. Give me $1 million. Give me $1 million. I would love that.
Is that
Wait,
like the new
what?
cool way of saying
How does
like
that
booted means giving $1 million?
Yeah, it means you pay me. That's what it means. You pay me means I should get booted. I totally agree with you. I definitely will take that payment.
That really
Definitely.
is like the slang. If I say
I've never heard
That's
this.
new slang of the day. Yeah.
oh come on, G-Man, are you making this up?
No, I'm serious. That is the new slang. Go to the hood. You'll hear all about it, man. Booted means you got to pay me.
Is it like sad boy? It's like brand new. It's hot off the press. Have you guys heard
Sad
about
boy.
what a sad boy
Okay,
is?
sad boy is an interesting thing.
You know what
Sad
sad boy is?
Sad boy means oh yeah, sad boy. He be busting a rhyme like crazy, man. You got to hear this new diss track sad boy made about Miss Parker, man. All kinds of wonderful adjectives are going to be used about her.
What? Okay, last one. Thanks for your question. Buddy from the outside chat says, G-Man, did you thank Rev for the headset? I'm sure you did. G-Man's always polite. And also want to let you know.
Rev. Thank you, Revelation News, for these headsets, man. Thank you. Anyways, let's go.
So that is nice.
If that's any of buddies of the outside. Anyway, thank you, buddy, for reminding me for giving permission for Rev for these things. Thank you, Rev. Let me thank you.
You got it. And thank you very much. We have to let these guys go. What time is it there in SIdharth and Arjuna? What time is it in each of your locations?
Michigan.
You're in Michigan, SIdharth?
Yeah, 11:30 EST.
And Arjuna, where are you?
It's 3:30 p.m. in Auckland, New Zealand.
Can I say one more thing,
Oakland.
James, if you don't mind? Earlier, I
Yeah.
was asked some questions, and I said I didn't know. That's called trolling, because I know what you guys are going to try to do that with later. It's trolling. So I just want to let you know that. I know what a misotheist is. I guess I can explain what these people's argument was, but I'm not going to do it because you guys don't care if I can do it or not.
What's the
I
misotheist?
care.
A misotheist is someone that hates God. An anti-theist like yourself is somebody that hates religion, but you qualify for misotheism and anti-theism.
You got it.
I'm referring to T-Jump, by the way, not the other people in here. T-Jump's the only atheist in the room, so.
You got it. Juicy, to say the least. And also want to say, folks, our guests are linked in the description. Our vision here is to provide a neutral platform so that everybody has their chance to make their case on a level playing field. So we want to encourage you, hey.
Can I promote my YouTube channel, please? Can I promote my YouTube channel?
Feel free.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Everybody that is here, I want everybody to go and subscribe to GTV. I got the dopest diss track in the world that I'm uploading tomorrow. And it is directed towards this Jezebel named Miss Parker. You got to check it out, yo. This woman is going to get owned, schooled, and everything else in the book. All right.
The feuds never end. So yes, that is linked in the description down below. With that, I'll be back in a moment with updates on upcoming debates. This one we just finalized today at the bottom right of your screen, folks. Human rights versus Sharia law. Which should we have? Muslim versus atheist. It's going to be a massive one. That's later this month. So, hey, folks, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And with that, I will be back in just a moment to let you know about other upcoming debates. And I forgot to mention, our guests aren't just linked here. SIdharth and Arjuna and Tom and G-Man are also linked in the description box for the podcast. So you can check out their links there as well, and I'll be right back in just a moment. Thanks so much, G-Man, Tom Jump, SIdharth, and Arjuna. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jump. Thank you, G-Man.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, James.
We'll be back in just a moment.